Go.
All right. Thank you, parents, colleagues, for joining us this evening. This is our presentation on consequences of spanking. So the health and well-being consequences that can occur for children into adulthood. We're going to be looking at that today. My name is Anne-Marie Gray Diaz. I'm a program facilitator with the Family Resource Center, where we work with parents, we work with families in endeavoring to support them to be as healthy and happy as possible in their family lives. I'm joined today by members of the Keys Foundation. I have Miss Denise Williams-Watson. She is a manager of the Francis Bodden Children's Home, as well as Beverly McKay, family support counselor, and Mr. Wendell Davis, a case manager. Thank you all for being with me today. I really appreciate your support.
Thank you for having us, Ms. Anne-Marie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. And so what we're really here to talk about today is some of the health and well-being consequences that can occur when parents are using spanking, beating, hitting, whatever you want to call it, some form of physical punishment when it comes to parenting. We're going to look at ACEs and as an extension of that. So ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. We're going to look at all of that as well and their impact on health. And we're also looking at what parents can do for themselves. Obviously, we're coming from a very much a non-judgmental approach. We are not here to shame or blame any parent. We certainly recognize how challenging parenting can be. And so we want to ensure that parents are empowered with the information that we're sharing today, as well as ensuring that they're taking care of themselves and supporting themselves first so that they can really do their best when it comes to parenting their children, right? So your well-being as a parent is paramount. And we know for a lot of parents that use spanking, beating, and hitting, again, whatever you want to call it, they're not necessarily intending to harm or to have any kind of long-term suffering for that child, right? We're not as parents ever in the actions that we choose hoping that it will harm our child in the long term. Absolutely not. And typically parents, they're hoping that this kind of sense of physical punishment is going to potentially rectify that negative behavior, right? And the thing is, it pauses the behavior in that moment, right? Out of fear, a child is going to stop whatever the behavior is. Now, the unfortunate thing is that it doesn't teach the child the correct behavior, and it can actually make that particular behavior worse, or can bring up other negative behaviors that we weren't trying to bring out in our child, right? And as you'll learn tonight, if you're not already aware, or it might refresh your memory on a few things, is that it could potentially impact their overall health well into adulthood and potentially the choices they make. So that's why it's so important that we learn about why we should refrain from spanking, hitting, and we're going to talk about alternative parenting strategies that don't cause any long-term harm and actually will potentially support that child in learning the correct behavior. So I'd like to start off with Miss Denise. If you can share a little bit with us about what issues some of your clients maybe typically present with and the underlying causes you believe are there. If you could share a little bit with us about that. And actually I went to the other slide too quickly, but go ahead, Miss Denise, when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Miss Anne-Marie. So for our young people in care, we do see quite a number of presenting issues among, well, you know, from our young persons. Typically, we see poor academic performance as one of the issues that, you know, are quite obvious initially within the community. And of course, poor academic performance, there are other reasons for that, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit. We typically see unsafe sexual behaviors as well from our young people. And, you know, there is the issue of substance use and abuse, you know, risky sexual behaviors, as I mentioned before, and self-harming behaviors. So normally there is the tendency to do superficial scratches to the arm as possibly a way of expressing that internal hurt that exists. So we do see behaviors such as those. There's, of course, poor social skills and poor social impulse control, limited impulse control, of course. And one of the big one, of course, is the what we talk about uncontrollable behaviors in young persons. So there's the defiance, there's the resistance to authority and structure. But all of these behaviors are presenting themselves for a reason. Children act out for different reasons. One of the things that we say is that every behavior has a purpose. So there is a reason for these behaviors. And some of the underlying causes for these behaviors is you touched on the ACEs in the beginning.
Yeah.
So there are various adverse childhood experiences that causes a child to act out or causes these concerning behaviors to be displayed in young people. And, some of those ACEs are, of course, emotional and physical abuse within the home environment. As simple, it might appear to be simple, but there's, things like unmet basic needs leading to neglect and abandonment issues in young persons. There is the birth defects that presents themselves as a result of drug or alcohol use during pregnancies. And, these defects causes fetal alcohol syndrome. And, from that, you have the low impulse control, you have the intellectual deficiencies, you have the learning challenges, of course. So those are some of the underlying challenges. Children become frustrated when they're in a classroom environment and they're unable to understand exactly what's going on. And many a times it is because of what is happening in their physical environment that is preventing them, or what would have happened, from birth, that is preventing them from taking or, making the best use of the resources that are within the environment. Divorce is a big one too, and how it is handled by parents. Children act out when they feel like their safe zone is threatened by change, and what they perceive to be negative change. There's exposure to violence in the environment. Our children fear their safety, as I said, being threatened, and they act out. They act out in a way to say, listen, I'm not okay. This is what is happening to me. And it is for us to understand, or to spend the time to understand exactly what is happening with our young people. So those are some of the things that we see in our own persons, young people in care.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miss Denise. That was so enlightening. And Miss Bev, in your experience, what has been the impact when parents are using corporal punishment as a form of parenting? So, and Miss Denise touched on so many different things. Obviously, we're looking at a screen now that has adverse childhood experiences. There's so many other things that can occur in a child's life, like Miss Denise said, to impact their well-being as children and certainly their future. Let's look at corporal punishment as a form of parenting. What have you seen? How does this impact children, in your opinion, Miss Bev?
Yes, based on my experience, include my opinions too, I have seen, based on my work with parents, where corporal punishment, as we call spanking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, it increases, then he's touching a bit of that, increases aggressive behaviors in children and young people. And of course, it also affects relation to the child and parent relationship, because sometimes when children are spanked, they don't see it as a loving, caring approach. And sometimes it causes them to be very rebellious, right? And they feel victimized, yes, and they feel like nobody cares about them. So it is really very damaging to the parent-child relationship. And of course, it may seem as though it offers a short-term and immediate compliance, but the changes in behaviors are only short-term. So a child may appear as though they're learning from that spanking, but that's just a short-term change. It doesn't change the behavior. It also sometimes allow that child had to act out and become bullying to others, because they might feel that spanking is a way to express your feelings. And so they may take on even bullying in school. So that is a very negative impact on a child, and also later on in life, we've seen, because working with young people and families, I've seen where a lot of children who are spanked accept dating violence, because they feel that that is one way of sending a message or showing that I do it because I love you, or I do it because I care, and other behavioral problems also rely, on that. So it really affects children and their behaviors and even their transition into adulthood, so it damages trust also. I've seen where it has damaged trust, right? You see, it damages even the stability of the young person, they don't cope very well. It also can lead to also mood disorders, because, it's not a corrective measure in every aspect. Just like I said, short term, not long term, and it also it impacts the child-parent relationship in terms of it doesn't offer that much security, because, children always look for a place where they can find security. And of course, not where they're being spanked. They don't find much security in that area, so because, spanking will lose in effectiveness over a period of time, right? And it doesn't help them to make better choices just because they are spanked. When they are redirected, that helps them to make better choices. So it does affect the relationship between parent and child.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Bev. And Mr. Windle, I remember when we were at our last session, I thought you made a very poignant, you brought up something quite poignant about how harmful the effects parents can even have on their children when they are just speaking about general topics, whether it's coming from news or, they're hearing about it from a friend or something, where there's violence that's occurred in the community, someone's been killed or arrested or so on, and parents are maybe talking about this openly. Can you share a little bit more about that and the harmful effects that can even have just having parents discuss things like that?
Oh, sure. Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you.
What we find out is that the children are expressing themselves. And when they share with us that my mommy told me this, or my daddy told me that, or they heard this from this family member or another family member, most time it's negative. And most times, if not all, there is a reaction to just getting that kind of news. So being in that therapeutic environment that we create for the youngsters, now they get this piece of information that, guess what? Your cousin got shot or got chopped up. Right away, the child may not be able to come to us and say, listen, this is what I heard. But we see the acting out behavior start. And when we will intervene, sometime even a crisis happened before, we see this acting out behavior going on. And when we get to the root of it, they were saying, because I heard this kind of news, or I heard that. That is when you try to piece together, realizing that this is so harmful and so detrimental to the youngster. In fact, one youngster said to us, after getting some news about some stuff, the youngster says, my auntie told me this, and I don't know what she expects me to do when I get this. How am I to deal with it? I am inside here. I can't go out to be of comfort to my friend. I cannot leave to go and give some support. And yet still she give me all of this. What am I supposed to? It looked like she want me to go mad. That was the youngster responding or expressing himself. I'm glad that he was able to at least share with us. But what we try to say to parent is this: we are creating and trying to build on the youngsters' self-esteem, their self-worth, and their productiveness in society. Yes, some of them may have missed out on a lot, and they are trying to catch up as best as they can. When you get your time to talk with your child, we are recommending, we are begging, we have been appealing to parents, let that time count. Let the quality of your time spent with that child be memorable positively, instead of sharing with them things that they have absolutely no control about. It's a short time. Find time to talk about how your day was, how have you been doing, how are you doing in school, these kind of things. This is what we are looking forward to. This is what we are hoping for, because really and truly, some of these news and some of these kind of thing, what it really leads to is just this dysregulation and mood that is not necessary, not helpful for the child. We now have to do what we consider to be patchwork in bringing back that child to that regulatory place where we want him to be, him or her to be. So therefore, in our situation in West Bay, it's him. So therefore, we have to find some creative way without getting into the family issue, because really, we do not really cater or say, well, all right, we're gonna have this session with this youngster and mommy right off and to get some result. No, instead we focus on the child. We beg the parents to come to a family meeting, and we try as best as possible. And going forward is that, parents, do yourself a favor. Your children are doing great. You do not need to be the one helping them to catch up on these negative news. Give them the positive and leave it there. That is our focus. Let them grow. Let them count their memories with mom and dad. And the recent thing my Bev and myself, we have been launching out and we have been doing is showing them very simple ways of spending quality time together without it have to cost you money. Simple games that is no cost to you at all. If you find a ball, sit across each other, throw the ball to each other. Simple things that really help to build memory that will last forever. Because let's face it, most of them, they have been traumatized in one way or the other. We have them there and we're doing the work, but it can only be as successful as the parents come on board and cooperate and be that partner in this helping process. Yes, we can talk to mommy on the phone. Yes, we can talk to daddy on the phone. But when you come out together and realize that, hey, I am not alone in this. It's not only my child is in this situation, but when you come to the parenting meeting, you realize that there's a lot of families going through the very similar thing that you're going through. So therefore, we can bond together. We can embrace and give support to each other in this approach to see how best we can get things back to normal.
Absolutely.
It is unfortunate. It is unfortunate that not every meeting we have all the parents come out, and that's the sad part of it. But for those who come, I can tell you the results are there to prove.
Yes, sir. And I know those that are coming, they're really actively involved. They're putting in that effort because they certainly want to see their child succeed. And the work that you do, all of you, Miss Bev, Miss Denise, and all your colleagues, it's amazing work you do in that support. And I know parents that are here potentially tonight or that might see this recording later are of course not wanting their children to get to that point where they are in care at Keys Foundation, right? At Keys Foundation, sorry. And so these are some of the things that we can start to eliminate and potentially make better. And so all of this information is to empower our parents. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about different adverse childhood experiences with focus on using physical punishment as a way of parenting. And so we definitely want to encourage parents to, there's so many things involved in parenting. There's a lot of pressures just in our general life. And there's a lot of information you're probably going to take away tonight, but we want you to at least take away, making a statement in your mind that I'm going to at least do this one thing. Hopefully by the end of this session, you'll have that in your mind. Now, speaking of the ACEs, obviously there's different forms of adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs, that Miss Denise has also pointed out. Emotional neglect is another one that is can be quite subtle. Parents might not even realize they're doing it. But this can be, you know, as simple as your child's coming home from school, they're talking about someone maybe upsetting them or bullying them, and you're brushing them off and you're like, you know what, suck it up, figure it out. I don't have time for this. You know, be a big man, a big woman, and manage your own problems. Now, we certainly want to challenge and support our child to, yes, to handle their problems, but we certainly want to be there to support them. And be, you know, be at least a sounding board, someone that they could talk to about some potential solutions to their problems, to at least be that person. And when they are crying or they are upset, obviously that can be quite triggering for parents. But to do our best to stay calm, to find out strategies that work for us to stay calm, so that we're not potentially hitting them just for crying, just for feeling. What happens there is a child learns that their emotions don't matter. They start to quiet about their needs and their emotions, not just to parents, but to other people, right? Miss Bev talked a lot about trust and how that parent-child relationship can be put into disrepair because of physical punishment. But even emotional neglect can be incredibly powerful in causing a rift in that parent-child relationship. So you're not going to be able to solve all your children's problems. We don't ask you to. We actually ask you to support them in solving their own problems. But certainly when especially when they're little, you want to be there to support them. And like Mr. Wendell is saying, that they do a lot when it comes to regulating those children that are coming into their care. So it's our job as parents to really potentially support them in that. And we have to figure out how we can stay calm in order to support them. Now, as a result of some of the ACEs, we heard from Miss Denise as well about some of those consequences that can happen, right? Those health consequences. So children maybe are growing up and becoming adults. They're turning to things like alcohol and drugs and lack of physical activity to cope with some of the things that they've had to deal with as children. But also other physical and mental health. They might start to self-harm, consider suicide. Depression might be something that happens, anxiety disorders. And why that is they've gone through toxic stress, right? The brain and the organs are now in overdrive. They're working harder than they need to because of this toxic stress that they've handled. And over time, that body starts to break down and develops health issues. So that's why we're seeing those health consequences occur as we're becoming adults. Now, these ACEs, I want to take us to this actual test that we're going to put in the link in the chat. Parents might wonder what this is all about, what their ACEs score is. And if you take this test for you yourself as a parent to identify any adverse childhood experiences you yourself have, which are potential traumas in your life, we'd like you to take a look. It's just 10 questions. You can do this after this is completed, and really be honest with yourself and some of these things that have occurred before you were 18 years old. And if you have a score, an ACE score of 3 or more, this is considered high. And this increases your chances of potentially having these health and well-being issues. And when you've done this and you've completed your test for yourself, it's good awareness for you so that you're more likely to take care of your health, to monitor yourself, to boost your resilience, right? Because it doesn't mean, oh my goodness, I've got a score of 3, this is it, my life is over. Absolutely not. It just means that there's some things that have happened that could potentially impact your health and your well-being. and your behavior too, and the way maybe you think about things. And so it's important to be aware of that. And so you can support yourself in development, right? But once you're done, I'd encourage you to take a look at this for your children as well. Is there anything on here that you would be able to identify that your children have already gone through? And as you can see, it's highlighted as at the top, the first two are pertaining to physical harm. So before you were 18, did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? So even the thought, the fear of being physically harmed is adverse childhood experience, is an ACE. So that right there, you or potentially your children are already getting a score of 1. And we certainly want to limit these ACEs as much as possible. But that also, number 1, has a lot to do with emotional harm as well, right? And number 2, before you were 18, did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? So again, just the first 2 when it comes to the ACEs test have to do with the fear of physical harm or physical harm. And the rest go into other forms of adverse childhood experiences. So please go ahead and get that self-awareness of what your score is. If it is 3 or higher, we do recommend you take extra care in your sense of well-being. And I want to invite the Keys Foundation staff. Obviously, a parent has to ensure that they're taking care of themselves first in order to choose the best strategies, the best parenting skills and tools to use. So parents have to ensure that they're in a good space, that they're in a state of calm, that they can manage their emotions. And so I'd like to encourage the staff to provide any recommendations you can to our parents when it comes to taking care of themselves, especially if they have experienced these traumas, they have experienced any of the adverse childhood experiences we've just looked at. What would you recommend?
Okay, I'll jump right in, Miss Anne-Marie.
Go for it, Miss Denise.
Okay, so it's important that as parents, we're self-aware. You talked about that earlier. So if we ourselves have experienced ACEs in our childhood, and we maybe nothing happened, no one assisted us with managing, that trauma that we were exposed to. As adults, it's important that we become self-aware in order to break the cycle for our own children, and then understand what we need for ourselves. So I'll talk about the ABCs that we have here, because it's important that we take care of both our mental and our physical health, as well as, having healthy relationships. So when we talk about trauma, we talk about, we always look at healthy, stable relationships. And that is one of the best interventions to overcome or to manage traumatic experiences. So we have to look at our support system as parents. And if there is none, then it's important that we develop a support system. Find other parents who are positive influences, for feedback for ourselves. Apart from those other parents, the community has a lot of resources. You yourself, the Family Resource Center, offers a whole lot for parents, so there is that level of support. There is, of course, we talk about therapeutic interventions. If you have experienced 3 or more of the ACEs, it's important for us to receive therapeutic intervention. But first and foremost, I would say support system of possibly other parents or other professionals within the community who we can receive positive feedback and support from. It's important for us to exercise, to become active, to release some of the stressors that we have, that we hold physically in our body. Physical exercise can do a whole lot. So we need to be moving our bodies and exercising and meditating, so the mind itself needs to be healthy, or to work on getting our minds to be healthy. So meditation is important, uh, and other physical activities. And Mr. Windell spoke about some things that we can do with our own children. So we talk about taking one stone to kill several birds. So we're taking care of ourselves, and we're taking care of our children at the same time, maintaining, healthy relationships. So get involved in physical activities with our children,
Yeah.
play games, go on the outdoors and play games. That gives us that connection, as well as help us to exercise and release those stressful chemicals in our body. So, that is just a few simple things that parents can do to help to take care of themselves. Look at when we have too much going on for ourselves, and, remove some of those stressors from our own environment, and, replace those stressors with healthier behaviors as much as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miss Denise. Anything to add, Miss Bev or Mr. Wendell?
I would like to add to that, yes, because what parents can do for themselves, because most of the times when parents actually resort to spanking as a corrective measures for behaviors, because they themselves have some trauma, undealt trauma dealing with, and probably don't know how to deal with it. So I believe seeking therapeutic intervention is really necessary, and also understanding behaviors and how to deal with difficult behaviors, and understand the link to trauma and behavior difficulties, because sometimes the children too are traumatized while they act out. They can be traumatized based on what they see happening in the family. And sometimes there's a lot of domestic violence, and that does traumatize the children. So I believe that if parents would accept that they need help and seek that therapeutic help that is necessary to help not just them, but the entire family, that really would help very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I know, Miss Bev, some parents or people in general might be apprehensive about going into some sort of treatment, going to talk to someone. Is there anything, and it doesn't have to be you, Miss Bev, but is there anything you think has maybe been successful in relieving that a little bit with parents, and that has maybe worked for you in encouraging parents to seek that sort of support, whether it's coming to us at Family Resource Center or going to a counselor? Has there been anything that you found encouraging for parents?
Yeah, we can talk about our family education programs, which you're part of too, Miss Anne-Marie. When parents get that forum to come to talk,
Yes.
Because they realize that they're not the only ones who are going through what they're going through. When they find it as a support group, an educational group, a support group, where they can talk about it and others can share their experience, and that is very relieving for them. Because sometimes they need an outlet to let it out, and also help to find, now that I let it out, how do I deal with this? And I found that there are a lot of parents who will tap into the resources that we have available for them, and namely the Family Resource Center that offers a wide range of family programs, and also our monthly parent education programs. And we do one-to-one family support with our parents as well, because sometimes some persons might not like the group therapy, but they will prefer the individual therapy, and they may not want to go into an agency. But because of the work that we do in Keys, we also have the opportunity to go into the homes and relate to parents one-on-one, and that makes a big difference. And we've seen where it's made a lot of difference with the family-child relationship, and the bonding is a lot much better, as they understand what they are going through, what the family is going through, and we help the child to understand and to be resilient through the traumatic experiences. We also help the parents, and that creates a bonding, with the family. So that has really been very instrumental in.
That's wonderful.
Parenting.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Bev.
I want to reiterate what Ms. Bev said. We find it to be quite useful meeting the parents where they are. So Miss Bev, she does a whole lot of individual sessions. So, and parents do find that quite useful. For different reasons, some might not be comfortable with the larger group setting. And we have seen tremendous results from Miss Bev going in and having those one-on-one sessions. So it's important for us to understand the limitations or the fears of our parents and try and meet them where they are. We found that to have made a significant difference in our interaction and intervention with the parents.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Denise. And we're fortunate at the Family Resource Center too, that we offer so much in the terms of programming and trying to meet our parents and their needs. Like you say, we offer co-parenting, we offer positive discipline, we offer the SNAP clinical program that supports children and their parents when it comes to emotional regulation. But yes, us too, we love doing our individual sessions, and we're able to really take the material from programming and potentially work it into that unique family, right? Everybody is individual and every family is individual as well. And so it can be much more supportive. Oh, okay, well, this particular parenting strategy doesn't work for you. That's absolutely fine. Let's figure out something that's going to work better. And that, is a little bit of trial and error. And definitely on the parents' point of view, it comes with a lot of consistency on their part to really identify if a parenting strategy is really useful for them or not. So that's something to be aware of, parents, is, if something isn't working straight away, that's an alternative to spanking, give it some time. It's important to keep up the consistency, and we're going to go into that a little bit. We can actually go into that now.
Just before you go, I just want to say,
go, Mr. Wendell.
Yes, I am just begging parents, please, just hug your children. They're begging for it. They're crying for it. Embrace them, hug them. Our radio ad says, one size fits all. Hug them. When you hear these youngsters are saying, my daddy never hugged me, my mommy never hugged me, they are crying for it. And we're talking about 15 and 16 and 17-year-olds. Of course, we are trying to bridge the gap there. Of course, we have no problem with them coming and asking for help. They will ask us for it. You understand? That's how desperate the situation is. And we encourage them, when you go home, feel free to try it. We talk to parents as well. It is okay for your child to hug you. Some parents have this standoff kind of thing. They're big children. Why do I need to hug them? No, they're begging for it. And as Ms. Bev talks about the family setting that we have when we have these workshops or parenting seminars, it is a very good avenue for parents to realize that, hey, I am not in this all alone. There are others, and we can always talk. We can always be resources to each other. When I went back, the last session we have, because each time we come home from these sessions, the children want to find out, was my daddy there? Was mommy in attendance? And the last one we went to, one particular child, his parent never normally come. And when I told him that daddy was there and you should see how daddy was involved, he didn't believe. He said, so daddy was playing too? I wish I could come to see that. He has never seen his daddy play, throwing ball and that kind of thing. And when he heard this, believe it or not, up to date, it carries him right through. He's just boiling, want because something is happening. So we are begging parents, just reach out to them, share that hug with them. Let it not be said that my mommy or my daddy never hugged me. And I don't know what, because this is what they're going back out in the community with. If you teach them these very soft skills, teach them this is a matter of fact, it's a need. And when these needs are met, they are able to carry it on to the next generation, which will definitely build the type of society that we will have a couple of years down the road. So we're begging parents, please, mothers, fathers, please do it for them so that they don't have to seek other ways of expressing themselves.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Wendell. Yes, physical affection is so important, and it's one of the love languages. It's a way that we feel safe and we feel secure. So even something as simple as hugging your children. Showing that physical affection is so important. Thank you for pointing that out. And I want to point out for parents, I think they think, you know what, if I'm not using beating or spanking, then I'm being too passive as a parent. That these positive parenting strategies, you know what, they're too permissive, they're too passive. Not at all. You can absolutely still be firm, you know, and it's about balance. It's important to be firm when needed, to ensure that you're being assertive when you're giving directions, that you're consequencing poor behavior, that you're ensuring that they understand the expectations and the rules, and all of these things are very important, and they lay down a foundation and a structure for your child. But absolutely, like Mr. Wendell's saying, there has to be that balance of also being affectionate and highlighting their well behaved, their good behaviors, you know, and that has to really be what we pay most attention to. And I want to tell a little story when it comes to, say, let's put ourselves as a parent in the workplace, right? We have a leader who's in charge of us, and they're constantly pointing out what we get wrong. They're constantly yelling or shouting at us. They're pointing out our mistakes. They're maybe even coming in and hitting us. And that's all we're kind of hearing, or that's what we're hearing the most. Now, I want you to question if this was really how you were operating in a workplace, if you would feel motivated to do good. Would you be motivated to stay there and to continue doing work for that company, or at least for that leader, right? Now, compared to an alternate scenario where a leader is correcting, you know, showing us the right way when we do make mistakes. They're really congratulating us and proud of us when we are getting it right. We're getting positive attention, and even showing interest in our personal interests. You know, are we going to feel motivated to do well, to do better with a leadership strategy like that? And it's not too different when we go into the home setting, right? So we as parents are very much leaders in our homes. Would we feel like our child is going to be more motivated to do well if we're the latter leader, the second leader, who is really pointing out all the great things that our child is doing? We're praising them, we're encouraging them to keep it up, you know, and we're being clear. We have to be clear as leaders in our directions, ensure that they've heard what we've said, get them to repeat back. Those sort of things are really important, right? And so I wanted to take us into the workplace a little bit, because it can really help be clear in our minds when it comes to our position as parents. So we do want to encourage balance. Obviously, you can be firm without using corporal punishment, without beating. You can lay down the law when it comes to, hey, these are the expectations in this house. These are the rules. This is what is going to happen if you don't follow. So it's very important to have those things in place. And sometimes when those things aren't in place, a parent might result in beating and things like that, because those things aren't in place. And a child isn't going to know what to do and what better behaviors to show, because they don't know what is necessarily expected of them. And so that's why I'd encourage to show the correct behavior. You know, it can even be a case of the child's done something wrong, they spilt something, or they knocked something down. You know, a natural thing would be, okay, let's come and let's clean this up, right? In another predicament, it could be that the child has said something that is very not, you know, really not okay, it's disrespectful. You can say, okay, pause, that is not okay in this house, that is disrespectful language. We're going to do that again. And this can be an opportunity for you to role play what to say. You know, things like this are okay. You know, speak to mommy in this way, and give them examples. Okay, now your turn, try that again. And so it's important to even correct the behavior right there in that moment, and give them an opportunity to do the right thing. And they might not even need you to role play for them. They might even already know the correct behavior, and they might correct themselves, you know, and you can say, well done, that was much better, right? So those are some examples of what we can do as parents. Obviously, we only have an hour with you this evening. There's so much more we can talk about when it comes to kind of the health consequences, when it comes to spanking or hitting, and what a parent can do for themselves, and in the way that they can parent their children potentially better, and curve away from these health consequences and ensure that their child is set up for success. So we do want to encourage you to use our resources at the Family Resource Center. I'm just going to bring it up so that parents can see. We're located at Apollo House West. We're just on the second floor above WORC, WORC, 87 Mary Street. That's where we're located. You can call us on 949-0006 or email us at frc@gov.ky if you're thinking, hey, you know what, I do want to try some other strategies that aren't going to be harmful to my child and potentially support them in being successful, healthy adults. Or you might want to look at yourself first and just say, you know what, some of these things happened to me and might have impacted me. That might be why I'm having unhealthy relationships. That might be why, you know, I'm struggling at work. And in that case, we can certainly refer you to the counseling center, or we can support you as well on the parenting basis. And we want to definitely thank the Keys Foundation staff, Mr. Wendell Davis, Miss Denise, Miss Beverly. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. And before we go, please feel free to make any final remarks or comments to our parents or encouragements to them.
Thank you for having us, Ms. Marie. I want to point out, though, that when we resort to spanking our children, what we do is we rob them of the opportunity to learn alternative, for them to learn conflict resolution skills. Because what we do is we go straight to spanking. So we teach them that you resort to violence to solve problems. And so learned behavior takes place, and our children will resort to violence to solve any problem that they may come across.
Yeah.
And they resort to spanking their own children because that's what they have learned. They have no other way or means of resolving conflicts. So some of the things that you spoke about is quite useful to practice whenever we find that there's conflict with their issues within the home. That needs resolving. Instead of going straight to spanking, we talk it through and we apply other means of reinforcing behaviors, other means of consequences. It's important that we teach our children, provide options to conflict resolution.
Absolutely, that's a great point. And I think a parent is more able to teach their child self-control strategies and conflict resolution strategies when they themselves practice them. Yes. And use them. And as you said, if they're resulting in resolving to go to violence, to hitting, that is what a child thinks is a good skill when it comes to solving conflict or resolving conflict. But if we, you know, share our calm instead of joining our children's chaos when, you know, maybe they're having a temper tantrum or having an outburst, if we can actually share our calm and stay calm by practicing things like deep breathing or self-soothing, or some of the things you were talking about, Miss Denise, like exercise, things that relieve our stress, then we are more likely to be in a place of calm and can support our child in how to de-escalate and find out and help them find out what works for them. And then they can solve problems if it's with their siblings or with children at school or their teachers. But we're not going to solve problems when we ourselves are upset and we're frustrated and we're yelling, and our child isn't going to be able to either. And so that's something we can certainly support parents and children in learning. That's one of that's certainly connected to our SNAP clinical program, and we're very lucky and fortunate to really support parents in an individual basis. We can go into the schools and teach these strategies, so we can really be flexible with parents. So thank you so much, Ms. Denise, for pointing that out. Ms. Bev, Mr. Wendell, any final thoughts?
I want to jump in with this final thought, and that's just for the parent. I know you mentioned it, Ms. Anne-Marie, about alternatives to corporate punishment, spanking, as we call it, because we know that a lot of parents who probably spank their children don't intend to cause harm, but
Right.
and they probably believe it's an effective strategy, but it's not. Corporal punishment is more harmful than how it is harmful. But I want to leave this with the parent tonight, that by teaching the children acceptable behaviors, including how to make good choices and exercise self-control, is an integral part of raising children. We also can use redirecting your child's behavior, tell them what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Whether it's a verbal redirection or physical redirection. Of course, we know timeout, grounding, withholding privileges, and all those are alternatives to spanking, and they can be very effective. A child will appreciate them, but sometimes when a damage is done by physical spanking, which is physical abuse, a child may not get over it, and the trauma is there hanging, which, as we said earlier on, result in some negative adult behaviors. So it's something for us to consider, alternatives to spanking.
Absolutely. And it's more stressful on the parent when they're using physical punishment. I've never seen a parent use physical punishment and they were in a calm state. Yes. They're usually very stressed out. They're angry. They're at their wits' end. And that's a lot of stress for that parent to repeatedly go through if they're using that on a daily basis. So even from the standpoint of caring for yourself as the parent, and limiting that stress on yourself and your child, that's important to think about as well. And Mr. Wendell, any final thoughts?
Oh, sure. What we do at Keys Foundation is that we model the desired behavior. And that means also that if there's a problem, we try to teach the child or explain to the child that, let us talk about it. Instead of fighting our way and getting loud and all of that, let us talk about it in a distant manner so that we can learn from each other, we can understand what the bottom line is. Finally, I always say to parent, just look at the helping process as though you would look at someone who is admitted at the hospital. Research has shown that the person that is in the hospital and gets no visit or very little visit takes much longer to be healed. Sometimes they never recover. While those who get visits and the attention, it's likely, it has been proven that they recuperate much faster. Why am I saying this? We are still having challenges when it comes on to some parent coming to visit or to attend the important meetings of their children. It is to the detriment of the child. And we are begging, we are beseeching, we are pleading with you. Come on out, give the support so that we work hand in hand and bring about that transformation that will make Cayman Islands even greater.
Beautiful. That was a wonderful way to end tonight's talk. Thank you so much to all of you for being here. Again, we've had Ms. Bev, Ms. Denise, and Mr. Wendell join us from the Keys Foundation. I wanted to go over to share your logo. If anyone did want to reach out to Keys Foundation for more information, what's the best way that they could do that?
We are reachable via telephone or email addresses. Our email addresses, for example, denise.williams.watson@keys.org.ky. You're able to reach me that way. Mr. Wendell, likewise, is wendell.davis@keys.org.ky. And Miss Beverly is beverly.mckay@keys.org.ky. And the Keys website is there as well. Limited information, but information nonetheless. So it's keys.org.ky. www.keys.org.ky.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being with me this evening. And thank you, parents, for being here as well. I know it can be hard to step out of your normal routine and to attend something like this. So we really appreciate parents and colleagues who have joined us this evening. And we really hope it's been helpful. Please reach out to us at the Family Resource Center if you'd like more support when it comes to parenting and supporting your child at 949-0006. Or email us at frc@gov.ky. We are here to help. We come from a very much a non-judgmental approach, and we are just committed to supporting you and your families to be as healthy and happy as possible. And that's what we're here for. So again, thank you for joining us, and wishing everyone a pleasant evening. Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Anne-Marie. Have a wonderful evening to you and all the guests who have joined us. Thank you.
Thank you.